So I wanted to talk about a couple of bits. I've done a couple of videos relating to fatherhood recently about my experiences of fatherhood. I don't want to bore any fucker because it can be pretty boring, can't it? Talk about parents, stuff that's really exciting and interesting to them. Really, I've got this really funny story to tell you about this little thing that my little girl's done or whatever, and it just bores you to fucking tears. So I don't want to do that, but just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. I've been a father for just over a year now, of ways in which it's kind of exceeded my expectations or been different from what I expected. Most of the ways, actually, it's been quite kind of what I expected. I love him as much as I thought I love him. I feel about the whole business about being a father I expected to. But there are some ways in which he's just surprised me. The first of those two ways that I'm going to talk about, I suppose, is just the amount of shit, right? If you're thinking of being a parent, you probably be aware that there's going to be an amount of shit. But at the same time, all the advertising, right? When you see a baby, their leg is never caked in shit, is it? It's always they look pristine in like white little clothes and sparkling little eyes and giving one of them little laughs, which they do. But it's just like a constant mopping up operation to maintain that. It's like having one of these fucking long-haired dogs, which looks great on Crufts or some equivalent dog show, right? But there's a lot of maintenance that goes into that coat. And if you don't keep on top of that daily, it just goes to shit. Well, obviously with a baby it's more than daily. Sometimes it's kind of half hourly if they're teething or whatever and if the shit's a bit runny. And my little boy has this thing. You need to intercept him very, very quickly because he's got a thing. He started walking now and just started trotting around actually now a bit more. But even before he's walking, have this thing where if he felt he was going to fall over, he'd stood up for ages, months and months and months. And if he felt he was going to fall over, he wouldn't topple sort of sideways. He'd just drop his legs and land on his arse like some kind of video game character that sort of does an arse slam to kill the enemies. One of them kind of things, right? Which is great if he hasn't just done a shit, but if he's got like a bolus of runny crap in his nappy, you imagine splat, it fires it, the impact fires it out the edges of that nappy. However good you've put the nappy on, it is insufficient. And I've had some cases where it's been all over the fucking place. It's been right down, you don't realise. You think, oh yeah, there's something going on here. I try and grab him before he manages to land on the floor if I realise. So I lay him down, or on one occasion I laid him down, I start taking his trousers off, and I hadn't realised, I'm sort of looking at the middle of the nappy, I hadn't realised right down the back of his leg, it's just shit all the way down. So I take his trousers off, his little denim jeans, put them down, and then think, I saw what looked like a pea, and it was a pea, and I realised, where's the pea come from? And I thought, oh God. So I turned these trousers round. Well, it's just caked. It's just absolutely caked. So then I thought, well, if it's on the trousers, it's on his leg. And he'd lent his leg, as his legs had splayed open, his leg is laid on my jogging pants. Pulled it away, all over my jogging pants. And as I'm looking at that, he pulls his foot across from his other leg, so it's on all his foot and on his other leg, and he puts his hand on his leg. Oh, Jesus. So it's on his hand, it's on by his foot, it's on his right down his leg. It's all over the fucking place. And what do? You're trying to hold everything then. My wife was out, the only one in the house, trying to hold everything, stop him putting his hand in his mouth first off. But then if you just deal with his hand, he's going to flap his legs around, kick about. Absolute fucking nightmare. I had no expectation of just how much shit was going to be involved. They just, some days they don't shit that much, other days they just seem to shit constantly. Just doesn't go in with the image of kind of what I expected of a little cuddly baby boy. It's just basically a little shit machine a lot of the time. So that was one of the things. I hadn't expected as much shit. Nobody really prepares you for that much shit. And I'm even listening to this, if you haven't got a baby, if you have one, there will be more shit than you think there is going to be. So just be aware of that. On the good side, on the positive side, he's kind of exceeded my expectations in the way that he picks things up. Not just kind of rote learning things, but there's clearly some understanding there that I really hadn't expected. He's only just over a year old. He was a year, in December he turned 1. And some of the things that he picks up, he's clearly aware, not just of his surroundings, obviously, but of the fact that I'm aware of what he's doing, and he's aware that he can influence things and that he can kind of pull the wool over my eyes in a way that I hadn't expected. If you look at things that talk about theory of mind in terms of children, it tends to talk about that developing at older age, 2, 3, 4. But he's clearly got some kind of theory of mind already. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to bore you with loads of fucking, because a lot of these tales are really boring, aren't they, if it's not your child. But what he does is, if I feed him, this gives you an example, if I feed him something that he does, he sits at his little high chair. He's got a little plastic thing around it, like a little plastic table that slots on. Okay? And I give him, spoon feed him some of the food, like this. There you go. There you go, little man. Open up. Ooh, there you go. But I also give him some little bits of food that he can pick up, so he can manipulate it, feed himself. And he loves to do that. He loves to have little bits of finger food. He's crap. That is something he's crap at, right? He's underwhelms me with that. If he was trying to eat this was a bit of food, he won't go like that. He holds it like that, and then even now doesn't seem to realise that it would be so much easier if he actually exposed some of the bit of food that he was eating. But anyway, so he's got a couple of bits in each hand, and he's kind of trying to fit his whole hand in his mouth each time to try and eat the bit of food and bite a bit off. And what he does is, if he doesn't want to eat it, he drops it off the side of the tray onto the floor, and he always gets a little bit of a ticking off. He's called Harris, and I'll say, now Harris, I've told you before, don't drop your food on the floor. Just put it on the side of the tray, right? So he kind of understands, if I'm watching him, don't drop the food on the floor, right? Get that? So he will not, he'll just sort of hold on to it, sometimes hover with it over the side of the tray, looking at me like, I might drop it, what are you going to do, right? Sort of a bit of a testing thing. But what he does is, if I'm watching him, or if my wife's feeding and she's watching him, he'll just sort of smuggle it down, look around a little bit, and smuggle it, okay, under the tray, and then just drop it on the edge of his seat, okay? I sort of don't really know. He obviously hasn't thought that one through, because obviously when he's taken out the seat at the end, what he's been up to, it's all exposed. I started showing him now. I turned him around and go, Harris, what have you been up to here? What's been going on here now? That's what I do now. But what he did on this particular, this was back in November when he's about 11 months old. He's playing with these bits of food. He's got a couple of bits in each hand, and he'd already snuck a couple of bits away down his seat. So he's got these two bits, and all of a sudden his hands both go like this. And I'm watching him, so I went down so he can see that I can see him, and I can see his hands. And so he kept hold of me, didn't let go of it, because he could see that I could see what was in his hands, you see. So I'm saying, Harris, you're not going to let go of those bits of food, are you? You're not going to lift your hands back up with the bits of food. And he just looked at me, right? It's sort of a bit of a game of brinksmanship going on here. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him. Right, bit of a standoff. So I thought, okay, so how do we progress this? So I lifted my head up and grabbed hold of his arms by he's got one of these long bibs that goes down the arm. So I grabbed hold of them and just said, come on, let's have your hands back up. So he pulls his hands back up. It's like a magician. He pulls his hands back up, and as he pulls his hands back up, there's nothing in them anymore. And he goes, it was like a jazz hands thing. He sort of showed me a clean set of palms, and then just kind of looked at me like he was trying to read, like, have I got away with this? It's worth a gamble. Have I got away? Well, of course, my wife's watching. I'm feeding him. My wife's watching me feed him. It was so hard not to laugh, because it was like he thought. You could tell he thought, I think I've got away with this. I think this little scheme has worked here. I managed to get away with this. Of course, he hadn't got away with it because I'm 43 years old and not 11 months. But there's obviously a lot of thinking going on there, in terms of what he perceives that I can perceive. And he obviously isn't always getting it right, but he's certainly trying to figure those kind of bits out. So that kind of really surprised me. Not the sort of rote learning and just sort of doing what you do, which he does, he tries to do the same things that you do. But it's those little bits which he's obviously given it some real thought. So those are the two things, but there's a lot of shit. If you're going to have a baby, expect shit. Okay, well, thanks for watching. Bye for now.